The speech of Swami Vivekananda at the World's Parliament of Religions, Chicago, 1893. Paper on Hinduism. Three religions now stand in the world which have come down to us from time prehistoric: Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, and Judaism. They have all received tremendous shocks, and all of them prove by their survival their internal strength. But while Judaism failed to absorb Christianity and was driven out of its place by its all conquering daughter, and a handful of Parsis is all that remain to tell the tale of their grand religion. Sect after sect arose in India and seemed to shake the religion of the Vedas to its very foundations. But like the waters of the seashore in the tremendous earthquake, it receded only for a while, only to return in an all absorbing flood, 1,000 times more vigorous. And when the tumult of rush was over, these sects were all sucked in, absorbed, and assimilated into the immense body of Mother Faith. From the high spiritual flights of Vedanta philosophy, of which the latest discoveries of science seem like echoes, to the low ideas of idolatry, with its multifarious mythology, the agnosticism of the Buddhist and the atheism of the Jain, each and all have a place in the Hindu's religion. Where then the question arises, where is the common center to which all these widely diverging radii converge? Where is the common basis upon which all these seemingly hopeless contradictions rest? And this question is the question I shall attempt to answer. The Hindus have received their religion through the revelation, the Vedas. They hold that the Vedas are without beginning and without end. It may sound ludicrous to this audience how a book can be without beginning or end. But by the Vedas, no books are meant. They mean the accumulated treasury of spiritual laws discovered by different persons in different times. Just as the law of gravitation existed before its discovery and would exist if all humanity forgot it, so is it with the laws that governs the spiritual world. The moral, ethical, and spiritual relations between soul and between individual spirits and the Father of all spirits were there before their discovery and would remain even if we forgot them. The discoverers of these laws are called rishis, and we honor them as perfected beings. I am glad to tell this audience that some of the very greatest of them were women. Here it may be said that these laws, as laws, may be without end, but there must have been a beginning. The Vedas teach us that creation is without beginning or end. Science is said to have proved that the sum total of cosmic energy is always the same. Then, if there was a time when nothing existed, where was all this manifested energy? Some say it was in the potential form in God. In that case, God is sometimes potential and sometimes kinetic, which would make him mutable. Everything mutable is a compound, and everything compound must undergo that change which is called destruction. So God would die, which is absurd. Therefore, there never was a time when there was no creation. If I may be allowed to use a simile, creation and creator are two lines without beginning and without end, running parallel to each other. God is the ever active providence by whose power systems after systems are being evolved out of chaos, made to run for a time and again destroyed. This is what the Brahman boy repeats every day. The sun and the moon the Lord created like the suns and the moons of previous cycles. And this agrees with modern science. Here I stand, and if I shut my eyes and try to conceive my existence, I. What is the idea before me? The idea of a body. Am I then nothing but a combination of material substances? The Vedas declare, no, I am a spirit living in a body. I am not the body, The body will die, but I shall not die. Here I am in this body, it will fall, but I shall go on living. I had also a past. The soul was not created, for creation means a combination, which means a certain future dissolution. If then the soul was created, it must die. Some are born happy, enjoy perfect health, with beautiful body, mental vigor, and all wants supplied. Others are born miserable. Some are without hands or feet. Others again are idiots and only drag on a wretched existence. Why, if they are all created, why does a just and merciful God create one happy and another unhappy? Why is he so partial? Nor would it mend matters in the least to hold that those who are miserable in this life will be happy in the future one. Why should a man be miserable even here in the reign of a just and merciful God? In second place, the idea of a creator God does not explain the anomaly, but simply expresses the cruel fate of an all powerful being. There must have been causes then, before his birth, to make a man miserable or happy, and those were in his past actions. Are not all the tendencies of the mind and the body accounted for by inherited aptitude? Here are two parallel lines of existence, one of the mind, the other of the matter. If the matter and its transformations answer for all that we have, there is no necessity for supposing the existence of a soul. But it cannot be proved that thought has been evolved out of matter. And if a philosophical monism is inevitable, spiritual monism is certainly logical and no less desirable than a materialistic monism. But neither of these is a necessity here. We cannot deny that body acquires certain tendencies from heredity, but those tendencies only mean the physical configuration, through which a peculiar mind alone can act in a peculiar way. There are other tendencies peculiar to a soul caused by his past actions, and a soul with a certain tendency would, by the laws of affinity, take birth in a body which is the fittest instrument for the display of that tendency. This is in accord with science, for science wants to explain everything by habit, and habit is got through repetitions. So, repetitions are necessary to explain the natural habits of a newborn soul. And since they were not obtained in the present life, they must have come down from past lives. There is another suggestion. Taking all these for granted, how is it that I do not remember anything from my past life? This can be easily explained. I am now speaking English. It is not my mother tongue. In fact, no words of my mother tongue are now present in my consciousness. But let me try to bring them up, and the Russian. That shows that consciousness is only the surface of the mental ocean, and within its depth are stored up all our experiences. Try and struggle, they would come up, and you would be unconscious even of your past life. This is direct and demonstrative evidence. Verification is the perfect proof of a theory, and here is a challenge thrown to the world by the rishis. We have discovered the secret by which very depths of the ocean of memory can be stirred up. Try it, and you would get the complete reminiscence of your past life. So then the Hindu believes that he is a spirit. Him the sword cannot pierce. Him the fire cannot burn. Him the water cannot melt. Him the air cannot dry. The Hindu believes that every soul is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is located in the body, and that death means the change of this center from body to body. Nor is the soul bound by the conditions of matter. In its very essence, it is free, unbounded, holy. pure, and perfect. But somehow or the other, it finds itself tied down to matter and thinks of itself as matter. Why should the free, perfect, and pure being be thus under the thraldom of matter? Is the next question. How can the perfect soul be deluded into the belief that it is imperfect? We have been told that the Hindus shirk the question and say that no such question can be there. Some thinkers want to answer it by positing one or more quasi perfect beings and use big scientific names to fill up the gap. But naming is not explaining. The question remains the same. How can the perfect become the quasi perfect? How can the pure, the absolute change even in microscopic particle of its nature? But the Hindu is sincere. He does not want to take shelter under sophistry. He is brave enough to face the question in a manly fashion, and his answer is, I do not know. I do not know how the perfect being, the soul, came to think of itself as imperfect, as joined to and conditioned by matter. But the fact is a fact for all that. It is a fact in everybody's consciousness that one thinks of oneself as a body. The Hindu does not attempt to explain why one thinks one is the body. The answer that it is the will of God is no explanation. This is nothing more than what a Hindu says. I do not know. Well then, the human soul is eternal and immortal, perfect and infinite. And death means only a change of center from one body to another. The present is determined by our past action and the future is determined by the present. The soul will go on evolving up or reverting back from birth to birth and death to death. But here is another question. Is man a tiny boat in a tempest, raised one moment on the foamy crest of billow and dashed down into a yawning chasm the next, rolling to and fro at the mercy of good and bad actions, a powerless, helpless wreck in an ever raging, ever rushing, uncompromising current of cause and effect? A little moth placed under the wheel of causation, which rolls on crushing everything in its way and waits not for the widow's tears or the orphan's cry. The heart sinks at the idea, yet this is the law of nature. Is there no hope? Is there no escape? Was the cry that went up from the bottom of the heart of despair. It reached the throne of mercy, and words of hope and consolation came down and inspired a Vedic sage. And he stood up before the world and in the trumpet voice proclaimed the glad tidings. Hear ye the children of immortal bliss, even ye that reside in higher spheres. I have found the Ancient One who is beyond all darkness, all delusion. Knowing him alone, you shall be saved from death over again. Children of immortal bliss, what a sweet, what a hopeful name. Allow me to call you, brethren, by that sweet name. Heirs of immortal bliss. Yeah, the Hindu refuses to call you sinners. Ye are the children of God, the sharers of immortal bliss, holy and perfect beings. Ye divinities on earth, sinners. It is a sin to call a man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. You are souls immortal, spirits free, blessed and eternal. Ye are not matter, ye are not bodies. Matter is your servant, not you the servant of matter. Thus it is that Vedas proclaim not a dreadful combination of unforgiving laws, not an endless prison of cause and effect, but that at the head of all these laws, in and through every particle of matter and force, stands one, by whose command the wind blows, the fire burns, the clouds rain, and death stalks upon the earth. And what is his nature? He is everywhere, the pure and formless one, the Almighty and the All Merciful. Thou art our Father, thou art our Mother, thou art our beloved friend, thou art the source of all strength. Give us strength. Thou art He that beareth the burdens of the universe. Help me bear the little burden of this life. Thus sang the rishis of the Veda. And how to worship Him? Through love. He is to be worshipped as the one beloved, dearer than everything in this and the next life. This is the doctrine of love declared in the Vedas. And let us see how it is fully developed and taught by Krishna, whom the Hindus believe to have been God incarnate on earth. He taught that man ought to live in this world like a lotus leaf, which grows in water but is never moistened by water. So a man ought to live in the world, his heart to God and his hands to work. It is good to love God for the hope of reward in this or in the next world. But it is better to love God for love's sake. And the prayer goes, Lord, I do not want wealth, nor children, nor learning. If it is thy will, I shall go from birth to birth, but grant me this, that I may love thee without the hope of reward. Love unselfishly, love for love's sake. One of the disciples of Krishna, the then emperor of India, was driven from his kingdom by his enemies and had to take shelter with his queen in a forest in the Himalayas. And there one day the queen asked him how it was that he, the utmost virtuous of men, should suffer so much misery. Yudhishthira answered, Behold, my queen, the Himalayas. How grand and how beautiful they are. I love them. They do not give me anything, but my nature is to love the grand, the beautiful. Therefore, I love them. Similarly, I love the Lord. He is the source of all beauty, of all sublimity. He is the only object to be loved. My nature is to love Him, and therefore I love. I do not pray for anything. I do not ask for anything. Let Him place me wherever He likes. I must love Him for love's sake. I cannot trade in love. The Vedas teach that the soul is divine, only held in the bondage of matter. Perfection will be reached when this bond will burst, and the word they use for it is therefore mukti, freedom. Freedom from the bonds of imperfection, freedom from death and misery. And this bondage can only fall off through the mercy of God. And this mercy comes on the pure. So purity is the condition of His mercy. How does that mercy act? He reveals Himself to the pure of heart. The pure and stainless see God. Yeah, even in this life. Then and then only all the crookedness of heart is made straight. Then all doubt ceases. He is no more the freak of a terrible law of causation. This is the very center, the very vital concept of Hinduism. The Hindu does not want to live upon the words and theories. If there are existence beyond the ordinary senses existence, he wants to come face to them. If there is a soul in him which is not matter, if there is an all-merciful universal soul, he will go to him direct. He must see him, and that alone can destroy all doubts. So the best proof of a Hindu sage gives about the soul, about God is, I have seen the soul, I have seen the God. And that is the only condition of perfection. The Hindu religion does not consist in struggles and attempts to believe a certain doctrine or dogma, but in realizing, not in believing, but in being and becoming. Thus, the whole object of their system is by constant struggle to become perfect, to become divine, to reach God and see God. And this reaching God, seeing God, becoming perfect even as the Father in heaven is perfect, constitutes the religion of the Hindus. And what becomes of a man when he attains perfection? He lives a life of bliss infinite. He enjoys infinite and perfect bliss, having obtained the only thing in which man ought to have pleasure, namely God, and enjoys the bliss with God. So far, all the Hindus are agreed. This is the common religion of all the sects of India. But then, perfection is absolute, and the absolute cannot be two or three. It cannot have any qualities. It cannot be an individual. And so, when a soul becomes perfect and absolute, it must become one with the Brahman. And it would only realize the Lord as the perfection, the reality of its own nature and existence. The existence, the absolute, knowledge absolute, the bliss absolute. We have often and often read this called the losing of individuality and becoming a stock or a stone. He jests at scars that never felt a wound. I tell you, it is nothing of that kind. If it is happiness to enjoy the consciousness of this small body, it must be greater happiness to enjoy the consciousness of two bodies. The measure of happiness increasing with the consciousness of an increasing number of bodies. The aim, the ultimate of happiness being reached when it would become a universal consciousness. Therefore, to gain this infinite universal individuality, this miserable little prison individuality must go. Then alone can death cease. When I am one with life, then alone can misery cease. When I am one with happiness itself, then alone can all error cease. When I am one with knowledge itself. And this is the necessary scientific conclusion. Science has proved to me that physical individuality is a delusion. That really my body is one little continuously changing body in an unbroken ocean of matter. And Advaita, unity, is the necessary conclusion with my other counterpart, soul. Science is nothing but the finding of unity. As soon as science would reach the perfect unity, it would stop from further progress because it would reach the goal. Thus, chemistry could not progress further when it would discover one element out of which all others could be made. Physics would stop when it would be able to fulfill its services in discovering one energy of which all others are but manifestations. And the science of religion becomes perfect when it would discover Him who is the one life in a universe of death. Him who is constant basis of an ever-changing world. One who is the only soul of which all souls are but delusive manifestation. Thus is it through multiplicity and duality that ultimate unity is reached. Religion can go no further. This is the goal of all science. All science is bound to come to this conclusion in the long run. Manifestation and not creation is the word for science today, and the Hindu is only glad that what he has been cherishing in his bosom for ages is going to be taught in a more forcible language and with further light from the latest conclusions of science.